Imagine this. You're a 12-year-old girl living in rural India. You go about your daily routine. You go to school, you're helping mom out in the kitchen, you cook food, clean the house, you play with your siblings, hang out with your friends and family, until one day, everything changes. And when I tell you everything, I mean everything. You just got your first period. I know, it's a new life. You completely changed, you're a woman now. This should be a time for celebration, but it's not. Let me ask you, what would you do, and I want you to really think about this, what would you do if you got your period and you didn't have access to pads or tampons? What would you do if you even had the access to pads or tampons if you didn't even know how to use them? What would you do if you couldn't go to school for 5 to 7 days while you were menstruating? And what would you do if you couldn't even talk to your mom or ask any advice about menstruation, a topic that you knew nothing about prior to getting your first period? This is a jarring reality to face, but it's a reality that so many in India and other rural developing countries have to face. So you might be wondering why I, an 18-year-old girl, would be willing to talk to you about this. And it's because of that exact reason. No one wants to talk about periods. It's dirty, it's kind of awkward, kind of uncomfy, especially out of health class, and it's sensitive. But that's the whole reason. So my name is Karishma Mystery, and today, as you've guessed, is that I am talking to you about the menstrual stigma in India and how we as a society can combat it. So I wanted to take you back on how I got to this whole point and how I thought this was kind of a good idea to talk about. When I was about this time last year during the royal wedding, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, my mom sent me an article about the Mina Mahila Foundation. This foundation received donations from charity donations from the royal wedding. It's a 501c nonprofit based in Mumbai, India, that works to empower, employ, and educate young women in these urban slums. I was so fascinated by this that I wanted to learn more. You may have heard, and I've read, a CNN article about women in Nepal, specifically Western Nepal. They have to, when menstruating, they have to go and live on the outskirts of their villages. They build these huts made of wood, made of clay, whatever materials that they can find there, by themselves. These huts are poorly ventilated, they're very small, and women are exposed to any material and all of the elements around her. Any animals, smoke inhalation, and snake bites. So many women and girls die of snake bites due to living in these huts. And I was kind of appalled by this. I just didn't understand why people were living like this and why is there such a stigma surrounding menstruation. I also have a pretty personal connection with this as well. Being Indian myself, I had witnessed the stigma on a slightly lower level when visiting my grandmother in the UK. Whenever we visit, my mom and dad would always tell me, do not talk about your period in front of your grandmother. Do not mention it, and do not mention any other people in the family having their periods. And I didn't understand why, until I noticed that my grandmother did not allow female members of the family, when menstruating, to attend or participate in any religious ceremonies. This includes weddings, funerals, any small house ceremonies. I didn't understand why she was contributing to this patriarchal stigma and these patriarchal customs until I learned that this is what she was taught growing up in India. For her 18 years that she lived in India, she was taught that she was dirty, that she was impure, and that she would contaminate things that she would touch just because she was on her period. After learning about this, I knew that I had to continue my research, and this led me to develop my essential question of how does the stigma surrounding menstruation affect young girls' education, sense of identity, and their overall future successes. So my burning driving question for this was, where did the stigma originate from? So, for a little history lesson, myth lesson, according to the Vedic myth, which is Hinduism's ancient scriptures, a snake-like demon lived in a cave, and he withheld the water and the livestock from a community. This region was so without prosperity, without fertility, that our hero Indra went into this cave, slayed Vishra, and freed the water and the livestock from the cave. This led to the land being fulfilled back with prosperity and with fertility. However, Indra was so ridden with guilt that he went to the women in his villages and asked them to take on a third of this guilt. The women agreed to take it on in the form of the menstrual cycle, once a month. Now, why is this stigma, and why is it such a stigma, if menstruation is so rooted in religion and there's a religious reason by it? And this is because of the idea of guilt. It's the idea that things should not be taken from women when they're menstruating because anything that they touch is filled with guilt, with anger, and with angst, and that anything that they have is just contaminated and should not be received by others, especially with males. Another driving question that I had asked, what is the perceptions that males and females in India hold regarding menstruation? An interesting fact that I found is in a study by Dr. Bella Kathari in India. It was a fairly small sample size of only about 45 married men, because that's all she could get to talk. Of these married men, only 50.1% connected menstruation with the process of reproduction and conception. That's an appalling fact because menstruation is one of the most essential and critical processes for the continuation of human life. Without it, there would be no human life. Yet simultaneously, it's the most taboo to talk about because no one really has the information or knows about the biology or the purpose behind it. Another driving question that I had was, what is the access to sanitary products? Women and girls, especially in rural areas, just don't have the access. They usually use cloth due to the fact that sanitary napkins are expensive. A woman's budget, their daily allowance, or monthly allowance, is about 45 Indian rupees to around 60. The cost of this pack of 10 of quality sanitary napkins that we could probably buy in the store here in CVS or Walgreens is about 48 Indian rupees. That's their whole monthly budget that they need to buy milk, to buy food, to buy clothes for their family. So women are not going to splurge on themselves for the luxury of using sanitary products. Rather, they would use cloth or any absorbent material that they can find. But the problem with this is that this cloth is dirty, it's contaminated, it's been used over and over again, that it's just not clean, and this leads to women to develop a lot of health issues, especially reproductive tract infections. These reproductive tract infections, if they're not treated promptly, then they can lead to in the worst case scenario, death, but to other problems, reproductive problems that can affect their entire lives. The other problem and the major issue is that women are using, as I said, cloth. And this absorbent material that they have, it can be anything. It's rags, it's, in the worst case scenario, it's hay, it's ashes that they can find, and they just sit on a cardboard box in their house. This causes women and girls to miss school, they were not able to be employed because schools and workplaces just don't have the infrastructure to support girls. So my primary research focused on three major perspectives: the academic perspective, the philanthropic perspective, and the local and Western perspective. I focused my perspectives on the big question of how successful are menstrual hygiene management interventions. Menstrual hygiene management interventions are methods that organizations and researchers develop to implement in communities to better women's experience and girls' experiences with menstruation, to give them access to sanitary products, to give them access to knowledge and education about what their body is going through. So my first perspective was the academic perspective. So my primary research was primarily centered around interviews and surveys, one survey. So my academic perspective, I interviewed two research professionals, Dr. Maggie Schmidt from Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health, and Dr. Julie Hannigan, who is a research associate at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. These researchers, they mainly focus on intervention methods and development of toolkits. For example, Schmidt, she worked on a toolkit in the refugee context for emergencies and menstrual hygiene management. This toolkit that she worked on is to be implemented by physicians and NGOs and other organizations that can take the toolkit and the goals that are in the toolkit, like educating females and providing access to sanitary products, and be applied to each organization or each physician in their own ways. A big theme in this perspective was the lack of funding. There's a severe lack of funding in menstruation research that leads to a severe lack of quantitative data. This field is reliant primarily on qualitative data, meaning statements from women, statements from men, and just other statements, and how women are feeling through surveys that are just qualitative data. It's important to gather quantitative data in order to properly assess how successful intervention methods are, to properly assess the success of implementing different methods, and to find the best method for menstrual hygiene interventions. So this is a big issue. And according to Hennigan, she said, and you guys may have heard of the Period End of Sentence. It's the Oscar-winning short documentary that won this past year. And Padman, the movie, this is a Bollywood movie that I watched when I just first started my journey, about a man, it's a true story, about a man who was so appalled by his wife's use of dirty cloth that he built his own machine that makes almost up to par quality of sanitary napkins that are found in stores. So the qualitative data and quantitative data, is very needed in this field. Another point that was a commonality in this academic perspective was the need for breaking the negative rhetoric surrounding menstruation. People do not want to talk about menstruation, but once you get women to talk about it, once you ask them the hard questions, and once they get over the little uncomfortableness, they are willing to talk. This is what Schmidt found in a lot of her focus groups that she's participated in pilot kits and pilot tests. So once you get women to talk, once you get males to talk, they will talk and they will tell you what they need and they will tell you what their experience is. Now, from my second perspective, this theme of breaking the negative rhetoric also appeared. This was a major topic. So, for the philanthropic perspective, these organizations, I interviewed the Desai Foundation's founder, Megha Desai, and the Mana Mahila Foundation's founder, Suhani Jalota, who both run organizations that are based in Mumbai, and then one is in Gujarat, India. These organizations work on the ground with women to successfully implement programs. A common model that these people use are they make sanitary napkins that are quality, almost the same quality as those you buy in a pharmacy. They make these sanitary napkins. They employ women in the communities to make sanitary napkins. They distribute these sanitary napkins through door-to-door sales so that women don't have to be subject to the shame of going into pharmacies. Because when women go into pharmacies to buy sanitary products, they are faced with the extreme shame of buying them, which deters from buying them menstrual products. For example, when people go into a pharmacy and a woman asks for a sanitary product from the male clerk, he will often ignore her until all of the other males in the store leave. They finish their shopping, they buy their goods, and they leave. Only then will the male acknowledge the woman. He will grab the sanitary products out from underneath his counter. He will wrap these products in layers and layers of newspaper, put it into another brown paper bag, and slide it over the desk. The Megha Desai, she correlated it to as if he's making a drug transaction. It's that bad, and there's that much shame surrounding menstruation that no one wants to even touch a sanitary napkin package. Breaking the negative rhetoric surrounding menstruation is so critical, especially for these organizations. According to Megha Desai, around 71% of women don't know what menstruation is prior to getting their first period. 71%. So girls from ages 11, 12, 13, however old they are when they get their period, they don't know what's happening when they think that they're dying when they get their period. Because prior to this, whenever they're bleeding, it was connotated with hurt. that people were scared for them, that they would get them a Band-Aid that they would help them. But once reaching menstruation, they would ask their mothers. They would be like, oh, I just got my period, and their mom would be like, it's dirty, it's impure, here's this cloth, nothing else. That is what it's like in rural India. My final perspective was the Western/local perspective. So, to gauge this, I conducted a survey that received about 520 respondents, 442 of which were females and 78 of which were males. The demographic of this was mainly on the east coast of the US. I was trying to get it into just Massachusetts or the Andover, Merrimack Valley community, but it spread, which was a really great base that I had. So this survey asked about the comfort level that participants had with talking about menstruation with their mothers, sisters, fathers, female friends, and male friends. And one statistic I found was that 50.8% of female respondents felt very comfortable, on a scale of 5 being very comfortable, with talking about menstruation with their family members, with their mothers and their sisters. That's only half of the respondents, which is kind of surprising that even in the US, people don't want to talk about it, even with their mothers or their sisters, family and friends. However, my most favorite part of my survey was my question that I asked about what are the code names people have for menstruation when they are talking about it with friends and family. Just take a moment, take this in, there are so many. So the main one, of course, being period, but followed by time of the month, Aunt Flo, Shark Week, Mother Nature, and my friend. Some of the more creative ones were eggs for breakfast, my enemy, the Red Sea, alpha uterus, and on the rag. I know. There's just so many, and I was so entertained reading this, but also so appalled about the number of code names people have. And this just kind of correlates to the fact that there is a stigma in the US surrounding menstruation. While it certainly is not as severe, people just don't want to call it period. They want to have these different names, code names, that they don't want other guys to hear or anyone else to hear that they're on their period, that they just use it with their friends. So while the stigma in the US is certainly not as severe as it is in the UK, in India, women here are fighting for like the tampon tax, to get rid of the tampon tax, to get rid of, or to improve the health education classes that we have here, just so people learn about menstruation at a younger age, or learn about it more comprehensively. But while in India, women are just fighting for the need for conversation to happen, for education, to just knowing about menstruation prior to their first period. So for my tangible, my final part of my project, I worked with the Who Run the World event at the Cormier Youth Center, who is run by Jacqueline Stackhouse, who works at the Youth Center. This event was focused on female empowerment and empowering women in high school here in Andover. So I asked Jackie if I could set up a booth to make sanitary napkins that are reusable, sustainable, and made of cloth. These last for about 3 years and are sent over to places in East Asia and Africa, wherever there is a need. So we made those fleece liners that are made of cotton, which is very absorbent, to be put into these sanitary napkins. We made about 270 sanitary fleece liners. I'm hoping to get to 300 by the end of this week. And I've been working with a club at Andover High School called the Girls for Girls Club. So we made 270 of those. And it was a pretty simple process of just cutting and stacking them. It was not that hard, but it makes such a difference. Just 10 minutes of someone making 4 of these liners fulfills a whole kit for women and girls in these developing countries and helps them not use dirty cloth and not use any absorbent material that they can find, rather that they use colorful, pretty sanitary products that hide blood stains, so they feel free to hang it up to dry, to be out in the open so that they're not afraid and they won't get reproductive tract infections. So, in conclusion, the biggest takeaway I had is that we need to create a dialogue surrounding menstruation, both here in the US and especially in India. There needs to be a dialogue so that we can talk about menstruation with males, we can talk about it with females, and that people are not afraid to ask for help and to ask for advice and to ask for knowledge. It's important that we raise a generation if we start talking about it with boys at school, we raise a new generation that is comfortable with talking about menstruation, that will support their sisters. And I want to leave us with a quote from that movie Padman that I mentioned earlier. While it might be a little bit dramatic for being as it is in a movie, the lead actress said, "For a woman, there is no greater shame than her period, not even a disease." This quote is jarring, and it just proves the fact that there needs to be a dialogue to reduce this shame, so that we can really help women have a better life, have a better future, and have a better overall health. Thank you.